Hi Twin Flames, it's Lisa here from Lisa's Twinflame Coaching. This video is on the topic of spiritual bypassing, and I know many of you may not have heard this term before, but it is important to be aware of this because I know on my journey that I was guilty of doing it. So I thought I'd just talk a little bit about what spiritual bypassing is, give you some examples and explain why it's important that we don't do this. So spiritual bypassing is when we kind of use our spiritual beliefs or practices to avoid uncomfortable emotions. So we are kind of like escaping or suppressing the difficult realities and the difficult emotions that are inside of us rather than directly facing them. And a lot of us probably would have done that throughout our lives, and particularly we can be guilty of doing it on the twin flame journey because the intensity of the emotions that come up on a journey like this are next level. So during your spiritual awakening and during your twin flame journey, you are going to be hit with some of the deepest emotions that you've ever felt. So it's going to bring up a lot of trauma and a lot of pain and a lot of wounds. So you are going to no doubt experience a lot of different emotions. And some will be like really great, like happy and joy and love, but other emotions are going to be incredibly intense, heartbreak, despair, frustration. So it's important on our journey that we don't try to bypass all of the emotions that come up, good or bad. So I just want to explain why we do often spiritually bypass. And I know on my journey, I did it because I was avoiding pain. So I was trying to not have to face my trauma, my unhealed wounds, or any of my pain from my past, and that was buried deep within me. So I would use spiritual practices to bypass. And there's many examples of kind of what spiritual bypassing is. One example is you may distract yourself. So rather than sitting with the hurt and the pain and the emotions that are coming up, you might try to stay busy. So you might be somebody who just takes on more work or uses addictions, for example, to distract themselves. So rather than sit with actual pain and do the healing work, you might go out and engage in some unhealthy addictions. You might just take another shift at work. Anything that kind of distracts you from having to deal with what's really going on within yourself. And staying super busy all the time and staying so occupied that you don't have to face the feelings that you're avoiding is definitely a form of spiritual bypassing. I was always doing that. So I would try to do more work, or I would use other substances to try to distract myself from what I was actually feeling. And addictions can be like a way to numb out or a way to block out the feelings that we aren't comfortable with or that we aren't quite ready to face. Another thing we might do to spiritually bypass is to avoid conflict. So if somebody is overstepping their boundaries with you, perhaps it's a family member, perhaps you're still sorting out a divorce or you're going through some turmoil with an ex, by avoiding conflict or by avoiding standing up for yourself, you could be spiritually bypassing. So by dismissing any of your personal problems or dismissing any potential opportunities to speak your truth, you are avoiding what's truly going on. And yes, like many of us don't like conflict. We're much more comfortable when things are peaceful and going along nicely. But there's times in life where we do have to go through some conflict, because as we stand up for ourselves, as we reset our boundaries, there are going to be people who don't like this. There are going to be people who press on those boundaries. And as a result, you are going to have to find your voice and stand up for yourself. And again, when you're around the right people, this isn't an issue. But as you're kind of going through the transition on this journey, you may find that you end up in a little bit of conflict with others. So basically, yeah, it's a form of escapism. We are preferring the comfort of the familiar. So we're avoiding the uncomfortable emotions. We're bypassing them rather than having to, sit with the intensity of them and deal with what's uncomfortable and unfamiliar. We're using other methods to pull ourselves away from having to do the work. And another way we spiritually bypass is by delaying difficult decisions. We may just keep deferring things, saying, I'll get to that later, I'll do that later. And perhaps your relationship is in trouble, and rather than addressing the issues of that or leaving, you keep saying, I'll deal with that later. I'm not ready to do that now. And there's nothing wrong with kind of thinking things through and taking your time. But if you are somebody who continuously procrastinates or defers decisions, then you are in fact spiritually bypassing. Other ways to spiritually bypass include blaming others. So rather than taking accountability for our own actions or our own emotions or our own behavior, we blame others. So we make it other people's fault. We blame them for the way we feel, rather than sitting and acknowledging that we play a part in how we do feel. All right, so be careful not to blame others. You are in charge of your life. You're in charge of your feelings. So it's your job to sit with those and work through any feelings rather than projecting onto other people. And another way people spiritually bypass is by being super positive all the time. So they sugarcoat everything. They make everything like is for the best and everything's going to work out great. And yes, we definitely want to have a positive outlook and a positive mindset, but there are times where it's okay to say that you're not okay. So things can't be rosy all the time. That is not being genuine or authentic. That is bypassing. So rather than just thinking everything is great all the time when it's not, it's okay to admit that. It's okay to sit and say, all right, this part of my life is in shambles, or this part of my life needs some work and some attention. And it's okay to admit that I haven't quite got all my ducks in a row in that area. And so make sure you're not just like too optimistic, too airy-fairy, always saying everything is great when it isn't. You need to be honest and real with yourself. And if you don't do that, if you continue to bypass your emotions, you are going to stay stuck. You are going to keep looping. You are going to avoid doing the actual work of this journey, and you're going to find yourself back where you started. So it's really important that you catch yourself when you are bypassing. You catch yourself when you are doing the avoidance of what you don't want to feel, and instead you've got to make that choice to actually face the uncomfortable feelings. So you must allow yourself to feel, and whether that's immense bliss when your twin is coming back, or whether that's immense sadness when your twin is rejecting you, it's okay. All feelings are valid. There's no good or bad emotions. They all play a part. So allow yourself to feel sad, allow yourself to feel broken, allow yourself to feel angry or disappointed. It's important to feel those feelings, to not bypass. All right. And often we're taught like anger is bad. You're not meant to hate people. You're not meant to be angry. And, and that's all well and good. But sometimes we are angry. Sometimes we are let down. And sometimes we do feel sad. So there's nothing wrong with admitting that. And there's nothing wrong with taking a moment or longer to grieve or sit with those sad feelings. So basically, spiritual bypass means allowing all of your feelings, not just saying, I only want the good feelings, I only want the happy feelings, I don't want to deal with the uncomfortable ones. That is spiritual bypass. You need to allow the uncomfortable feelings just as easily as you allow the more positive emotions. So the truth of having a human experience is that it isn't all love and light. We aren't always having everything go right. The truth of having a human experience is that things do go wrong sometimes. We do lose people we care about. There are trials and tribulations from having a human experience, and it's okay to admit that things are not great all of the time. I just want to point out a few more ways that we spiritually bypass. And if you're still with me at this point of the video, then well done, because it's really important to figure out which techniques you're using to bypass, because quite often we are doing this in one form or another. And it's just a matter of realizing, okay, am I someone who uses addictions to avoid my feelings, or am I somebody who always acts like I've got it all together? Try and figure out what you do to bypass, and then you can correct that behavior. So just a few more ways that we do bypass is by smiling when we're sad, by pretending that we're super happy to friends and family, when inside we really just need to say, I'm not feeling very well at the moment and I just need some space. So it's okay to be down. It's okay to say that you don't feel okay and that you just need to have some quiet time, or that you need a friend to talk to. It's okay to be honest and authentic, and to tell your closest friends and family that there's a little bit going on for you right now. Other things people do, they ignore fear. So if you're feeling frightened or scared, rather than ignoring that fear, try to sit with it and say, why do I feel afraid right now? So maybe you have a fear that like your twin's not going to come back. Sit with that fear. Rather than just washing over it and ignoring it, sit with that fear and ask, what am I so afraid of? Am I afraid of being alone? Am I afraid that I've pushed my twin too far away and now they won't come back? So work through that fear and try to get to the point where you can acknowledge the truth of the journey, which is I can never lose my twin, and no matter what I do, everything's going to be okay, and I just need to find some trust and some faith. Other ways we bypass is by neglecting our boundaries. So you might be somebody who always says yes when you actually want to say no. So rather than saying, no, I'm too tired, I don't want to do that extra day at work, or no, I don't want to go out for dinner tonight, I just want to stay home and read a book. Rather than saying no, we say yes. So we're neglecting our boundaries. We're putting on a front to make somebody else happy, rather than going within and saying it's okay to say no sometimes. So also, like, if you're not accepting what is really going on, so perhaps you're a little bit like I was, like I reckon I was a little bit delusional. Like, rather than accepting what my twin was truly showing me, at times I would twist it and make it a story that was more preferable to my ego. And there is an element of defense mechanism coming out in that. So perhaps you're just not quite ready to deal with the pain or the disappointment from your twin at that point, and that's okay. But you do have to make sure that you're not just creating that story around what your twin is doing, and you're not just choosing to see what you prefer rather than what your twin is actually showing you. And remember, your twin is reflecting back to you what's going on. So it's really important to look at it honestly and to deal with what they are showing you in that mirror, rather than going with what your ego prefers. All right, so I'm just going to end by saying it's really important to be real, to be raw, to be authentic, no suppression. And again, that's not an overnight switch. It takes time to feel comfortable being our authentic selves. It takes time to get comfortable with the uncomfortable feelings, and it is just like a work in progress. So each day, just work a little more on being okay with who you truly are, and being okay to allow all of your emotions. So process your emotions even if they're unpleasant. Don't hide from them. It's okay to cry or scream or whatever you need to do to process those emotions, but the key here is to not avoid them. All right, so we're all human, we all have flaws, we all have struggles, and we all need to make sure that there is a safe space for each and every one of us to admit when we're struggling, to admit when we're not perfect, and that gives everybody else permission also to admit that they aren't perfect and that they have struggles too. If you have any questions about spiritual bypassing, please feel free to put them in the comments. I love hearing from you guys. I will do my best to answer any questions that come up. Thank you for listening, and God bless.